I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
Dude!
Welcome to another edition of
J-O-B.
Yes.
What y'all got going here is genius.
No problemo.
This is
the Job and Knock podcast.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Hello and welcome to the first Job and Knock podcast. What's happening? My name is Dan and I'm going to be your host for this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon. That would all depend on what time you decided to put me in your ears or through your speakers. I suppose people can listen to me through their speakers. But now that's out of the way, let's concentrate on why I'm actually here. And like I said, this is the first Job and Knock podcast, so maybe I'll explain exactly where I got the name from. I mean, a lot of people in the UK are going to know what Job and Knock is, but anyone that's not inside the UK may not quite understand what that phrase means. So we're a podcast that's mainly going to be talking about things around the construction industry, but anything will go. We're not going to be fixated on just one kind of chat or one kind of industry. I've got friends who are tilers, plumbers, plasterers, electricians, and through social media I've made quite a lot of friends that do all manner of things from all corners of the globe. And Job and Knock basically means, well, let's put in a scenario. A job and knock day is a good day. You get in, you get done, you get paid, you go home. Everybody likes a job and knock day. In, done, paid, home, brilliant. Beer on the patio, happy as Larry. Everyone likes a job and knock day. So I thought, well, that's the name I'm going to give the podcast. And secondly, why the podcast? So mainly just because I spend a lot of my time on my other business that some people may know, U-Scribejig. We'll talk about that later. And through U-Scribejig, again, like I said, I've made lots of friends and come across lots of different people from lots of different walks of life. And from that and my own social media, I spend a hell of a lot of time talking about tools, tool brands, tool companies. I know people within tool companies. I know people that have started tool companies. We started tool company ourselves. So you spend a great amount of time discussing techniques, tips, tricks, looking at other people's profiles, seeing, I mean, some of you do some amazing things and they deserve talking about. Some of you don't, and you will not be getting talked about. Some of you need to rein it in. But again, like I say, I'm not going to take a too serious approach to everything. There will be times when we need to be serious, especially if we're talking about things that, need a serious head. But if, like I say, if anyone does know me or does know what I'm about, we don't take things too seriously. Life's too short, and that's one reason I'm not going to be the most serious person in the room every time. But yeah, so that's a little bit about the podcast and a little bit why we decided, or I decided, to call it the Job and Knock podcast. And again, before we get too far into things, I'm going to try my best not to swear. I'm going to try and make it a clean podcast, but at the same time, we're all grown-ups, and sometimes only a swear will get the job done. I know some people are going to be listening to podcasts in their cars. Sometimes going to be listening to them on a job site or God knows where, wherever you feel like. And I know a lot of podcasts do swear. I mean, I've had some podcasts in customers' houses that I've needed to, put my headphones in. And I'll make a big effort at the start of each podcast, once, people have been on and we've had a conversation, to say whether there's been swearing or not. So at least if you're driving with kids in the car, if it's a clean podcast or not. I've got kids myself, so I know how important it is to try and keep them from swearing for as long as possible. Because let's be honest, they were probably already swearing. It's just the way it is. As soon as you turn your back, you know what it's like when you were a kid. As soon as you're out the house, it was F everything, wasn't it? It was just brilliant. And as soon as you crossed the threshold, you got back home, you drop an F-bomb, God forbid, you would know it. Slapped. Hit. Have you ever had soap in your mouth? Oh man, it makes you think about swearing in front of your nan, especially when your nan goes to church. That is another story. We'll maybe touch on these things in the future. But again, I'm not going to try and swear. I'm going to try and keep it clean. But when people are on, I'm not going to say to them, listen, I don't want you swearing, because it's not going to happen, especially grown-ups talking about things that may either, one, infuriate them, or two, you get carried away. We just like a swear. But yeah, so that's just to cover that up. But like I say, we'll try our best. The social media, the Job and Not podcast has an Instagram page already. I have set up a YouTube and a web page that I'll finalise now. I didn't get a chance to finalise them. Purely due to, I tell you what, if we timestamp this will make more sense. It's Tuesday the 7th of April, 2020, and we are in the midst of the coronavirus lockdown. For all you scientists, COVID-19. But yeah, that has completely changed everything that everybody's doing at the moment, apart from anyone working in NHS and anyone that is listening who's got a partner, brother, sister, auntie, uncle, wherever it may be, wife, husband in the NHS, and they're doing a fantastic job, and I for one couldn't thank them all enough. Their job is invaluable, and this coronavirus outbreak, or whatever it will end up being, pandemic, is proven that it's not the car, it's not the money, it's not the wealth, it is the people, from the bin men to the doctors to the nurses. They are the people that we really need. Celebrity culture, the excess waste, and the amount of time that we're not spending with our families, it got a little bit too much, and maybe this is a good reflection on who we should be as people and who we shouldn't be as people. But again, I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole on the coronavirus, as hopefully it's over sooner rather than later. We can all get back to being miserable and moaning about work and wishing we had more free time. But so the idea behind the website that I will finalise and the YouTube and things was also shameful self-promotion for my own brand, my own company, but also for others. So a lot of companies wanted to be involved with our product over the years, whether they wanted to work alongside U-Scribe or be involved with us in one way, shape or form. So we made a lot of friends over the years through the different tool industries, and I decided, well, the best way to merge most of these platforms would be through the media, through the social media. The Instagram page exists, so the Job and Not podcast exists on Instagram. I started that a while ago. A few of you already follow, which thank you very much. And I'll work more on that in the future now the podcast's up and running. And the website was going to be a little bit of a backdrop to that. So again, it will exist. It will change slightly. So the companies that wanted to be involved in the first place, obviously they got their hands full. There's a lot going on at the minute, so they're not going to be involved at the moment. But I know a ton of small companies, a ton of small brands that possibly want to take us up on the offer. And I'll speak to them moving on in the future, and we'll see how that works. So the YouTube I'll finalise, and we'll use the YouTube also if we do more of an interview scenario podcast and you want to see the ugly mug of whoever I'm talking to. I'm probably sick of seeing mine if you follow us over at U-Scribejig, but sometimes that's a good little platform, so we'll use that. And I'm probably going to leave Facebook and Twitter alone. They're dead, they annoy me. Everyone's a keyboard warrior or a politician on both of them platforms, and they drive me insane, so I'm probably not going to go and dip my toe in that water again. But yeah, so from this point, maybe we'll get it up, we'll get it out of the way. Now, I'm going to tell you the story of U-Scribejig, whether you like it or not. Well, actually, if you don't like it, you can turn it off. That's one way of doing it. But one of the reasons we got so big into social media is through a product that me and my business partner Scott had invented, and probably gonna be close to a couple of years or more ago. And just gotta have a little drink of water. Just spare me 2 seconds. And tell you the story. Me and Scott both work locally. We kind of crossed each other on Twitter without knowing each other or meeting each other, just through social media back in the day. And we bumped into each other in the local timber merchants a few times. There was a company that Scott was doing a lot of subcontracting for, which I do a lot of subcontracting for now. And they put a little advert out looking for another tradesman. And so transpired that a couple of the guys that worked there were getting really old at the time. And they were not phasing them out so much, but they weren't going to work forever. They were both getting on for 70, which is crazy old age to be working. But that's probably a different story. So I approached Scott from the front before anyone says, "You bunch of weirdos," and just dropped him a message. I just slid in his DMs. There's so many entendres going on. Just to ask him if everything was okay. I didn't want to step on anyone's toes if I applied for this position, shall we say, or offered my abilities. But he just said, the guys are getting old and looking for swap over. So I went, I met the owner, quick interview, and next thing you know, me and Scott are doing a couple of jobs together. We're on a job in a old church-style listed building over by, if anyone's local, the JCB factory roaster, Burton Way, Derby Way, and we're doing a lovely 1909 kitchen. 1909 kitchen is a PWS in frame or lay on door. It's one of their premium range, high end ranges. And you can just imagine there's old stone floors, stone walls. Everything's out. It's built 500-600 years ago, and everything's all over the place. And we're doing a ton of scribing to the floor, to the walls, to the ceilings, and we just hit heads against a brick wall with it all day. One of us holding one end while doing the other. They're on long lengths, and we're both talking about how do you do this and how do I do that. And one good thing about working with a tradesman sometimes, especially someone they haven't worked with for a long time or ever, is that you just pick up tips and you get to see how they do things. A bit like with social media these days, you get to see how somebody does something, and you either kick yourself and go, I can't believe I've been doing it this backwards way all this time, or I can take a little bit of that information, a little bit of that technique, and improve mine. And we sat about one dinner time kind of thinking, well, it's not so much the scribing part, it's the marking out part that we're struggling with. So is there anything that we can quickly knock up a jig to help us? And we drew something out on a piece of paper, and it was a very early version of the product itself. It's not how it is now, but let's just say it wasn't a million miles off. We tried to make it out of a bit of wood, and it didn't particularly work out. Whilst we're on the job, we ordered a bit of perspex, and that didn't particularly work out. We tried seeing if we could get one milled out of aluminium. The issue with that is the tolerance in boards. So when you're sliding anything metal over wood or chipboard or MDF or painted furniture, it leaves a mark. So that wasn't really an option. And the Eureka Moment came some months after. Scott was talking to me about 3D printing, and we both kind of had this idea of, well, perfect, why don't we make that thingamabob what we were on about. And Scott, I will have to pay Scott, the business partner, who's due, because if it was down to me, there would have been no CAD designing, softwaring, importing, exporting, 3D printing life. I'm just not that guy. It just would not have happened. Whereas Scott's on the ball, he's technical, he's organised, He's intuitive. He's just on the ball with them things. He gets it done. He's smart, and he gets a 3D printer. And next thing you know, we've got different versions of our idea in physical form, and it's an amazing process of prototyping. So we'd actually printed off, say, 6 of these initial jigs, and we're giving him a test. And through the weeks we'd give each other a phone call, and we need to change this, we need to change that. It's not quite working. It is quite working, and we settled on this similar design than we've got now. But again, say the 4th or 5th version of the product with no name at the time. It wasn't called it didn't called anything at the time. We just kept on calling it a jig. And it worked really well. I was using them for months and months, and we still joke to this day that Scott didn't. He spent all this time and all this money on 3D printing software, hours and hours of testing, hours and hours of designing, hours and hours of importing on this software that wasn't very easy to use at the time, and then he didn't use them. And I think that just comes down to methods and how we all work, and breaking the cycle sometimes very difficult to do. But coming back to the story, I was on a job fitting some wardrobes, and I tend to work alongside an electrician named Andy. He popped out to me one day, and we're doing a lot of inset lighting, and he saw me using, and we'd actually printed them in green at the time, saw me using them, and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing there?" So I explained, I'm just using these clips, and I put it on the top and it offsets it by the 18, and I can scribe it, and I can do it all in one length by myself because it's holding it up there for me. And he stood there and looked at me, and I could see him working it out, and he says, "Oh, well, I could do that now. You should sell them." And then, you stand there and go, "Yeah, you know what, I probably could do that. Yeah, I've never really thought of it. It wasn't really an idea that we'd had to sell as a business." So jokingly, that day I'd sent Scott a message on Twitter, or I'd put a post on Twitter and called it the "You Thingy-ma-Bobsy What's It. We'll go on Dragon's Den. We'll clear up with him. This time next year, Rodney, we'll be millionaires." So it was like a laugh and a joke. But obviously, people were already following us on our own Twitter accounts at the time. So a couple of guys said, "Oh, what are these things you've got?" So we just said, "Oh, it's just some idea that me and Scott have had. Falpers do the scribes and the infills and the plinths on the kitchens and the bedrooms that we fit." One guy asked, "Could I have some?" And Scott printed him some off, and another guy asked him if he could print some off, and another guy asked if he could print some off, and then before we knew it, we couldn't do it for free. So Scott set up a PayPal link, which, funnily enough, as I've said before to other people, is you used to follow this PayPal link to buy first sets of U-Scribes, and the first thing you're greeted with was a massive warning sign saying that this link isn't protected, it's not safe, and it's not secure. But people carried on buying them anyway. So that's a good insight to card safety online. People see a warning sign and they still buy them from you, which is brilliant. But that was the birth of the business, shall we say. And it was from that point that we decided, well, shall we finalise a design? Shall we make the product a product? And shall we create a business from this model? Because the demand became increasingly hard to deliver over the next few weeks. We ended up buying another printer to keep up with the amount of interest. And I would probably say Scott's printers were going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for, say, 3 to 4 weeks. And it just got overwhelming for him. And I can remember having a conversation with him, because obviously I'll be sat at my house at this time, fiddling around with social media that we didn't really know how to use, trying to promote the initial start of the business while Scott's, pulling his hair out. Well, I didn't have much hair, so I can't really say pulling his chest hair out over the fact that he can't print the jigs fast enough to meet the demand. So it was at that point then we finalised a lot of the important parts. So in this business, you've got to protect your businesses and copyrights and patents and trademarks and all these other things. It becomes a very expensive, very daunting, very scary process very fast. But nonetheless, the business had made a few quid by then. And when I mean a few quid, I generally just mean a few quid. So we had enough money to start off a lot of these processes, and hopefully we'd have, well, we thought at the time, hopefully we'd have enough money at the end to finalise them, which we did. But we put all the processes in place, started a website, and then we started using the Instagram page, and from there it just carried on growing and growing and growing, and pretty much that was the start of the story of the U-Scribejig. We named it the U-Scribejig because you can scribe it using the jig, hence the name U-Scribe. We trademarked all the logos and copyrights and started all these other things that you need to be doing. And when we touched on Instagram, it went crazy. Whether we were onto a good idea or whether people were buying something because everyone else was kind of on the train, it went crazy. And again, we'd outsourced this 3D printing by this point to a company in Sheffield. This guy was an expert in 3D printing. He would create machines for people that wanted certain things 3D printing if they needed something that was out of the realms of a printer. So this guy can print you a 6-foot Christmas tree if you want, or a part for a boat. You know, he will build the machine to print the print and the software. You know, he's a genius guy. So at this point, we're outsourcing the product because we couldn't manufacture enough, and then we were still finding ourselves in a brick wall with getting them out the door quick enough, which is amazing when I think of it going back, because the business sustained itself for so long. Without people like yourselves that are listening, it would have never grown into the position that it is, which is fantastic. So we found ourselves in a catch-22 scenario now where how do we take the business to the next level? Because we can't cope with the demand, so we need to figure out a way of relieving that pressure by getting the product to the next level. Now, the next level is called injection molding. So you'll see all our products now, well, apart from two, so the most popular, the 18, which is green, the 19, which is blue, and the 16, which is yellow, are all injection molded. Now, this is a very expensive and another very scary and daunting prospect when you're starting off in this business. And I'll probably say this is the point where a lot of companies decide whether to go on, whether to create a business, or they fold, because the outlay is crazy money, but at the same time, it is very good. But if I can just touch on that story, by this point, through social media, we've made quite a few friends. We've been on a few excursions to trade events so we could meet people, talk to people, pick people's brains. We're kind of the people where we pick the phone up and speak to people. We don't want to do all these emails. And we'd met a ton of people. So I'm going to say by this time, we'd met Julian, R1 Jules, social media, John Jones, who is now Jones Interiors from Merthyr Tydfil. You should catch John. John's a funny guy. He's also great at his job. Keyblades and Fixings. You've probably seen the Keyblades and Fixings, lads. White Blades, Green Lions. And Jamie Anderson. We met Harry, Enfield Refurbishments. That's another story. And the list goes on. HB Oak Frames, John Coombs, Hood's Tiling. We've met tons of people. Tom Maiden. I'm going to forget people. Leon from Tradesmen. Oh God, I don't want to feel like I'm missing people out because I'm just going off the cuff. But we met all these people at these trade shows, and we got ourselves into a position where it was the next step for our business. Excuse me. Keyblades and Fixings. Shout out to Mitch and Lee. They were actually doing well at this point in their business as well. They hadn't quite got themselves to self-sustaining yet. They were still working their day jobs whilst selling blades online. And they've grew themselves into a cracking little business now. They were actually working for a guy who specialised in manufacturing, so injection moulding. He's got six-axis CNCs and all kinds of things going on in his factory. He makes different parts for all different kind of things. So him making what looks like a small green chair is going to be a doddle. The lads mentioned to Keith. We met Keith. down in Portsmouth, and from then on in, we've been injection molded. Again, like I say, it's a very expensive process. You need to buy a steel block. Inside the steel block needs to go the impression of whatever you want to print. The more impressions you put in, the more expensive it becomes. The more moving parts, the more expensive it becomes. And now I'm an open book, and I've spoke about this on Alistair's podcast at Freebird Interiors, of how expensive this process can be. So your moulding, your tooling can be from, say, £6,000-7,000 for a single impression, up to £25,000-30,000 for multiple impressions. So you can times that by the 3 products that we injection mould, and you can see you could put a deposit down on 3 small houses for the price of making the product, which is crazy. And like at the time, it was daunting, scary, terrifying. We're thinking we're throwing money away. But again, we worked hard at the business, and with support from people like yourselves who've bought the jigs, or people that have just seen it and give us a heads up and give us a foot up and pointed in the right direction. You know, it's become the business it has today. I am currently sat at U-Scribejig looking at all the boxes which you have to have a form made for, which is another expensive job. So if you just want a box and you're lucky enough to find a box that'll fit the size of something that you want to buy, you can just buy them for a few pence off eBay or Amazon. If you want a box to fit your product, you have to buy a box form. A box form can be £300 or £400 just to stamp the impression into the cardboard so that you can fold your box up. Every time you want something designing, and there's a cost. Every time you want something printing, there's a minimum order for. Every time you want to order a box, there's a minimum order for. And every time you want the product, there's a minimum order for. So it becomes very fast, a very working and automated business. And I sit here and I'm quite proud of the fact. And so is Scott. And that kind of brings us up to the present day, if I'm being honest. That's where we are today. And that is the story of U-Scribe. And I like to say, obviously, I haven't done it all by myself. Scott did help out at times. You know, he's been there and tick boxes. No, I'm only kidding. Scott, he's a business partner. I like to say business partner because if you say partner, people think that you're sexually inclined to touch each other. And I'll be honest with you, I do not want to sexually touch Scott, and Scott does not want to sexually touch me. And moving on. Scott's involvement is massive, so I'm the forefront of the business. I'm the one that puts his face there. I'm the one you mainly talk to, hear or see. I'm the one in the stories, and I'm the one doing all the posts and all the messages. Scott kind of runs the behind the scenes, so Scott fulfills a lot of the orders that go to retailers. He deals with a lot of the outside factors, so a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the business side of things, the VAT, all the registrations, basically does all the bits I can't. But he's good at them. No, what works really well about our partnership is that we're so the same, but we're so different at the same time. And I mean that in the best possible way. So I'm more easygoing, and I'm more, let's do it. Scott's more thoughtful and thinks about things. I've got more patience. He's can't wait. It's got to be done there and then. It's almost like a contradiction of each other. It's ridiculous. So I'm really laid back. Scott's more uptight about things. I'll be like, oh, let's just give him a chance. Don't worry about it. He's already raging. They haven't paid. It's been 3 minutes. What's going on? You know, it's just, that's how our partnership works, and it works really well that we are so different but so the same. And he's done a lot behind the scenes. I love a lot behind the scenes, and he still does. So that's a little bit of the story, or probably a little bit of the story. That is the full story of how we began, where we went, and how we got to this point. So, just going to have a quick drink of water, and then I'm not going to make this extremely long podcast, just because I wanted to start it off, give a brief description of who we are, what we are, who we've come from, where we've come from, and where we'd like to go. So, talking about future podcasts. At the meantime, I'm going to speak to a few more people that expressed some interest at the beginning to talk about future podcasts. And I'm sure I can get quite a few on pretty fast. So we might ramp up a few podcasts before everyone kicks back into work properly, just because it'd be a great time to get these people sat down and pick their brains about certain things of the job and, life and industry and the business that they're in. But also I appreciate that a lot of people are probably enjoying their family time, so do they want to come on a podcast and talk about stupid things with me? Well, we'll find out. We will find out. And we'll probably put that as the ending. We'll make that the finishing statement that we're going to get some more people on board, and it'll probably be sooner rather than later. I appreciate everyone taking the time to give the podcast a listen. I know this one has kind of just been an informative breakdown of the podcast and the things behind it, but I just thought it might be a nice way to introduce myself, introduce who we are, what we're about, and where we like to take the podcast, so that in the future podcasts it will make sense when these kind of people pop up, or what we start talking about, or where we go with it. So again, like I say, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Thank you.
Grazie.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Come again.
Doing a great job.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't think you'll regret it.
Time to go home. I'm out of here.
I'm Pickle Rick!
Thank you so much for being my friends.
The Job of Knock podcast.